Hello, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Let's talk about data, how it might have helped us. We know we watch these setups overnight, we plug in some information, and then, we kind of get this thing rocking. So let's bounce over to what we had data wise. So this morning, what we were looking at was we had this, most likely time to put in the low was right around 5:30, right in that time range. So if we flip back over, that was pretty legit, right? 510, I think, is when the low came in on NQ. Not too bad. Um, we had some other times in here as well, but the most likely was right around then, so that's good. Then we were looking at 8:30 to roughly 10, but typically 8:30 on news, and then the open, gives us a bit of a jolt as well to go sweep the low. And why do we know it's a low sweep? Because there's a news typically comes out at 8:30, and then we have the open at 9:30, right? Those are the highest areas. The rest of them are pretty slim. So every now and then we might go sweep, but typically it looks like it's on high volatility to go sweep and then get into this stuff up here. But if you notice, as this data starts to go down, this data starts to go up. So what does this tell us? Possible sweep of the low, or at least an attempted sweep of the low that we probably put in around here to move back to the other side. Something like we did today, right? So, how do we validate this? We can go here, and what this is going to do for us is we're going to pipe in the same overnight data and then the early data, the early morning data, the pre market data. And this is going to give us a list of days historically that's set up like today. So here we go, right? The attempt, sweep the low, move back to the high, sweep the low, move back up. Attempted sweep of the low goes put in the high. Sweep the lower attempt. This is just an attempt here. Back to the high. Attempted. No, this actually swept the low at the open. Put in the high. Right. See how this looks very similar? Now, this is a weird one, right? So why am I less interested in trading once we go sweep the high and get the completion of whatever we're doing up there? Because if we look, the chances of us putting in a new high and a new low at the same, at the end of the day are similarly weighted, I will say. So we don't know which way that wants to go. But looking at this, we know the attempt is going to be to sweep. Whether we get that or not, we don't know, to move back to the high. Attempted sweep or sweep back to the high. Attempted sweep or sweep back to the high. See how this works? See how this works? This is the great thing about utilizing data and utilizing it properly. Does that mean we win 100% of our trades? No, we're still only human. We still have to analyze this. We still have to take the trades. But you see how all of these days set up very similarly. Okay? So if we take this information and we use it properly, things are good, right? We get this this high of day range out here. Then we get this high of day range out here. Let's see what this was. Let's flip back over before we go. Let's measure this out. I remember building this. I don't remember where I built it from. Let's see here. So all of these ranges are basically from Globex. So that's 0.9. So we've got a 0.6 to a 0.9. So that's going to be right here. So it's basically once we get outside of this area, right, which is going to be right here roughly, if we start squeezing through that, and we should have, right, we had this pattern set up here. We had this crab that was supposed to get to 1618, but it looks like it was a lesser crab here. Squeezed into this 1902 pretty much exactly, got into our high of day predicted zone, and rejected all the way back down to the open area. Basically just a range day. All right. So this is how we can utilize data in multiple ways. Now, there's way more to this. One more thing before we go. Let's get back into something else. See this red line right here? Well, once we got our data and we knew this 10 o'clock time frame wasn't sweeping this low, we still had this other statistic, and it's one that I've talked about before. Right here. Midnight. Ended up at roughly a 91% chance. Okay? A 91% chance around the open to get back to this red line right here. All right, so if we're measuring this pattern out, we're going to go sweep this area, but we know there's a crab. We know how crabs work if we understand harmonics. So we know our target's going to be here. Then we've got this other crab that was trying to play out up to here. All right, now we didn't get up to this 1618, and that's okay. Now, sometimes these patterns do fail, but this is where data is helpful. Again, we don't win 100% of trades. Nobody does. But this data definitely helps. If you're interested in checking it out, getting access, hit me up.